Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Meeting the People Who Are Changing the World. I'm Lori Lamont from Empowerment EFT, and I'm so excited to introduce all of you to Guthrie Sayen. Now, he is the co-founder of the Institute for Healing and Awakening, which is dedicated to evolving global well-being by training coaches and other professionals to facilitate the shift in consciousness. How good does that feel? That wants to happen. Yes. And he created and leads Coaching with Spirit, a training in life coaching fundamentals and coaching with IFS, which is kind of what we're going to be focusing on today. A series of courses on internal family systems, and he's been training light workers worldwide since 2018. Guthrie, you're the man. Like, I'm so excited to be meeting you. I've met you before, but I'm so excited to be with you today and to share you with our community, but also just really with the world, because that's what it's all about, right? Like, we're changing the world.
We are. And if our job is to create joy, you've created a lot of joy in my heart. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you so much. It's so fun. Um, so I just want to, kind of like pick your brain a little bit about I guess let's start with IFS. What brought you there? What attracted you to IFS?
Well, I guess you could say that I've been on a lifelong journey um, to learn about the human mind and about the human spirit. And in some ways, I've been very disappointed in my search. I don't find what I want. I try these different meditation techniques. I never had very good instruction. Um, and so it's it's been a start and stop process.
Mm.
But since my preteen years, I have been interested in human psychology. And I'm I was trained in two models that saw the human psyche as having many parts. And so one of those models is called psychosynthesis. And the other model was called voice dialogue. And after I got trained as a coach, I found these models to be useful, but they didn't seem to go as far as I wanted to go. And a friend of mine spoke very highly of internal family systems. And I took a training, a workshop with the founder in 2013. And as I told him afterwards, I said, this is both a validation of what I'm discovering on my own and a revelation.
Mm.
And for me, the central revelation is what the model calls self with a capital S. And so I think most of us are familiar with the voices that we hear in our heads. You know, the voice that says, well, I'd like to go to the party, but another part of me wants to stay home. Or I want to have a difficult conversation with my intimate partner, but now's not the time. So if you imagine that those are all parts of you that are little beings that live inside you, and they all relax, they all soften back, what what appears is self with a capital S. What appears is your true identity, your essence, your consciousness. So consciousness is what's aware of all the things like thoughts, emotions, and sensory impressions. And what's really cool about IFS is that it's a simple method of actually getting parts to relax and soften back and accessing self with a capital S.
Hmm.
It's what all the spiritual traditions are aiming for. And it was these big ideas were provided to me by Dick Schwartz in such a simple, easy way to understand. And it revolutionized how I saw myself, how I saw my clients, and ultimately how I see human systems in society.
Mm-hmm. This is fascinating. And so in this framework, I mean, I guess I would imagine, right, my next question was going to be like, what's your favorite part of this work? And I'm imagining it had something to do with accessing that self with the capital F, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's something completely different. I don't know. So what is the thing that really lights you up as you're doing this work with people, with yourself? I mean, because sometimes I feel like when we, as you just said, when you start to see like the bigger picture and how this is playing out in, sometimes it can be overwhelming, or maybe it can be a lot, or so I'm just curious, like I imagine you've probably gone through your own discovery with all of this, and then what's at the end of what's the thing for you that makes it so exciting? And
Yeah. So self is the guiding light for
Mhm,
everything. But here's what the attraction is for me is that when I sit down with another person, we enter into a sacred relationship. And here's how I see that sacred relationship is that this is a unique expression of the divine. And the doorways into that system are going to be a little different than anybody else's doorways. And the excitement for me is entering that system without knowing anything and assuming the system's going to teach me how it wants to heal. And how that system wants to heal is going to be unique. There are going to be similarities with other systems. There's certain principles that
mhm,
seem to be universal, but the way it actually unrolls is going to be unique to that person. And so one way I describe to people what I do is that I I enter another person's internal system. I come inside their psyche in a sense,
mhm,
but only as an invited guest. And I invite that psyche to teach me how it wants to heal,
yeah,
how it wants to tap into its own internal wisdom. Because every human system, whether it's internal or external, whether it's an individual with parts and self, or a family with different members, or a community, the answer to any problems they may have are in that system.
mhm,
And if you treat the system with respect, you build trust. So you have to
mhm,
come in with humility.
yeah,
And as the system begins to trust you, it actually reveals how it wants to heal, how it wants to evolve, actually. Because every
mhm,
system wants to evolve, because that is how spirit expresses itself,
mhm,
or the unfolding of consciousness.
yeah,
And so I guess the excitement for me is to be a part of this sacred mystery.
mhm. You know, there's so many. There's so many things I want to say. And I'm just so excited. In EFT. we often talk about how the client has answers inside of them, right? We're calming their nervous system, we're building that rapport and that trust so that we can then, the subconscious or will show us the thing that's ready to be addressed, right? And all that's wonderful. Here's the thing, and I don't know if you maybe have a similarity in IFS. In EFT, we have, kind of the golden nugget that we're looking for, like is to help the people come to this cognitive shift, like a new way of looking at their world, their life, their right, coming to this new and cognitive shifts are wonderful. But new EFT practitioners might push for that. And they kind of get like in their ego agenda driven, like we got to solve the problem. We got to like get in there and fix it. And we got to fix them or change them or heal them. And I feel like a lot of our work in this as trainers and coaches is kind of helping people trust the process and go as nice and slow and gentle, build that rapport, build that trust. Because I actually talk a lot about this in the training where it's like, do you want to have a one night stand? Or do you want to have like a lifelong relationship? Right. And like, sure, this might feel nice in this moment. We can push the client to get to something, but that's not going to change them profoundly. And that's not going to have an impact on their entire life. And so having this like allowing for this deep relationship to happen and allowing, but the way that you've explained it is, wow, I love it. And how you're saying, teach me how to heal, how it wants to heal. I mean, that's just brilliant. I have to fix my blurry camera, but I just love how you've managed to articulate so much of what it feels like is just so necessary in this world, because I think sometimes we come at it from this like fixing, healing, problem solving. Do you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. In fact, I'd like to reflect it back using IFS language. Would that be
Mhm.
okay?
Please, yes.
So, when a practitioner becomes attached to an outcome
Hmm.
or a timetable or looking good,
Hmm.
they're blended with a part of them, a part of themselves, a subpersonality who's got those agendas. So if I have an agenda or a judgment, I am blended with a part, and I've lost access to self with a capital S. And so what you're describing in a mature practitioner is someone who has confidence, that is, access to self, and the parts are relaxed, and then they can let the client's system tell them how it wants to heal and what the pace is, because each system has its own pace.
Yes. Yes, yes, and yes. This is exactly it. And people will well, how many sessions is it going to take to solve this problem? Or how many it's like, I don't know. We'll find out.
This is another place where IFS is really useful because when the client tells me that, I know I'm talking to a part.
Yes.
And so what I do with clients like that, I said, what if what if you could get to know the part of you that actually holds this timetable? Would you be
Mm,
interested? And if they say yes, we're almost getting separation right then between the part and the seat of consciousness, which is self. And when the part realizes that self is there and that self sees and appreciates that part, which has this agenda,
mhm,
which is for the client's safety and well
mhm,
being, the part begins to relax because the part has taken on more responsibility than it can handle.
mhm,
Because self is the natural leader of the system, and the parts attempted to take on that role. And the tragedy is These parts are dedicated to our well-being, and yet they're doomed to failure because they're trying to be self.
Mm,
And as a client system begins to appreciate this and parts get to know self, they relax, and then actually the healing goes faster. It's more efficient,
mhm.
put it that way.
As the beautiful Tori Kelly, who actually introduced me to you, says, the slower we go, faster we get there.
Yeah,
And she's so right.
yeah,
Maybe she got that from you. I don't know. But she loves it. That's her slogan, and she's dead on. And I love to remind people of that.
yeah. That's one of my favorite sayings. I say slow is fast and
Hmm.
fast is slow. But yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you watch a session that I'm doing, I often start very slowly, but it's building credibility in the system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also waiting for the parts that um, to come forward, parts that are interested to come forward. And then the process begins to pick up momentum because the client now has more access to self.
This is this is so fascinating. I can't wait until we have our present until you come and present to our group community later this month. But so who do you serve? Like, are you mainly focused on teaching this to other like coaches and therapists and whatnot, or do you have a practice where are you seeing clients as well? Like, do you do it all? What do you do? What do you do?
So let me start big picture and then I'll tell you about the specifics of what I
Sure.
do. But um, in the summer of 2009, um, every day after breakfast, I would open up a connection to my guides to get information on my soul's purpose.
Mm,
And my purpose showed up in four different dimensions. So just in the being dimension of who I am, even when I'm doing nothing, I am a bridge to the divine, which is the name of my website.
wow.
Yeah. And then in terms of the process that I'm designed to do to help other people transform, I bring wounded healers into the temple of love so they can heal the world.
Mm,
So that's my divine audience, wounded healers. These are people whose specific wounds are actually their training for how they will heal others or participate in other people's healing. Actually, we heal ourselves, but we need a
mm,
companion to facilitate that in us. I have one myself, I see every week.
mhm.
So I'll say more about wounded healers in a moment.
Sure.
Um, and the big project or my mission is to bring the light of love to this planet. I mean, there's various ways to say that, to end suffering on the planet by bringing the light of love. And how I do that is I'm in the process of creating a college of light workers.
Mm,
And I'm using college not in the bricks and mortar sense, but in terms of a collectivity. So it's those wounded healers. Those are the light workers. I'm training them to answer their own calling as healers and as the midwives of awakening to help people awaken. So that's how it ripples out into the world. And then the fourth dimension of my soul's purpose is my message, which is the tagline on my website. Love yourself and you can love the whole world. But it begins here.
mhm.
So the ability to accept your full humanity allows you to be a loving presence in the world. It makes you, if you can be compassionate toward yourself, you can be compassionate toward others. So I created a coaching model. It's called Coaching with Spirit. And in the center of the model are three principles. We are divine, or we are self with a capital S.
Okay.
Principle number one. Principle number two, we are human, which means we're imperfect, which means we live east of Eden, and that we're unskillful in how we manage all the hurts and the troubles that we encounter in life. And the third principle is to be fully human, to accept your full humanity and all its imperfections, is to be divine. So that's really at the center of the work I do. In terms of what I'm doing right now, I stopped seeing clients one-on-one. And when I stopped, I I had a list. I had 40 people on my waiting list, and I just stopped putting them on the waiting list. They wanted to do IFS. That's that's why they were on that
Right.
list there. But I stopped seeing clients devote myself full time to the creation and delivery of training programs
Mhm.
for people in your community, the wounded healers, or
Right.
the people who are already trained in some modalities, but want something that will help them take their clients even deeper.
Mhm.
So that's what I do.
It's like so casual. Yeah, that's what I do. You know, just bridging to the divine and helping the wounded healers change the world. It's all no big deal. It's all like it's all very casual. Like, I'll have a cup of coffee, please. Like,
That's perfect because in my coaching model, so the actual image is a circle, and in the circle is an equilateral triangle.
mhm,
And at the apex of that equilateral triangle is self with a capital S, our divine aspect. And then in the lower left angle is the coach, and in the lower right angle is the client. And so you see both coach and client are connected to self. So even though we're all unique and each system is unique, as I said earlier, there's no difference between us. We're all self.
yeah.
So when we go down to the base, and I like the fact that it's the base, the foundation is the coach-client relationship, as you know. And in this model, I say there are four pillars to the coach-client relationship. And the first
Okay.
pillar is love. It's the connection between us.
Mhm.
And the second pillar is trust. Trusting my divinity, trusting your divinity.
Mhm.
Third is truth. Always be truthful with ourselves, with our clients, with the divine. And the fourth, which is why I'm telling this, is playfulness,
Yeah.
which you, Lori, naturally tap into. So playfulness for me is always an indicator. Do I have that critical mass of self? Is playfulness available even when we're doing deep, sobbing work?
Mhm.
Is playfulness still a potential here? I mean, I work with clients, sometimes they're sobbing and then they're laughing and then they're sobbing.
Mhm.
But you notice even now, as we name playfulness, it helps create safety, which is the prerequisite of transformational work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's just it. I mean, if you, um, and I love that you're talking about playfulness. Maybe about a year ago, I started learning about the forms of play that we have as adults that we may not realize. And it's like a little quiz, and I took the quiz, and I'm like, oh, I'm an explorer. That makes sense for me. Learning new things is also a form of play right? And there, so yeah, so things that maybe I thought were just the collector, the person who likes it, right? That's part of their play, or the storyteller, and connecting with their different forms of play and really embracing it and realizing that um, kind of giving yourself permission to be playful um, in whatever way that makes sense for you. Although I bet you all those different types are probably different parts that you would be able to go into deeper in the IFS, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think play is a natural quality of self as well.
yeah.
I mean, sometimes I'm just walking around, Lori, and I start laughing. I think there's a huge cosmic joke out there
Mhm.
just waiting to be appreciated.
I have, and it's funny, I've heard a lot over the last few years, I've, people are, they'll say different things about, how do we get through all these turbulent times and all this stuff? And the one thing that I've heard from a lot of different gurus out there, like, just, just laugh, just play, just, it's all about our own frequency. And the more we can sort of laugh and be playful and joyful, um,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
agree. Many people feel despair
Mhm.
about the state of the world.
Sure.
And I was just talking to my friend and business partner, Barty, the co-founder with me of the Institute for Healing and Awakening. And and she said joy is the antidote to despair.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think it is. And people say, well, how can you be joyful? Well, my despair is actually going to only feed more despair.
Right.
And it's not that I should ignore my despair. If I'm feeling despair, I want to be present to it.
Hmm.
But I don't need to wallow in it. I don't need to bond with other people who are in despair.
Right.
And when I'm in despair, I feed despair into the morphic field.
Hmm.
When I'm in joy, I feed joy into the morphic field, and that helps lift everybody everywhere.
Right.
It's a non-local impact.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, I feel like I've asked all the questions I wanted to ask, but is there anything else you want to kind of share about yourself? Is there anything like maybe non-IFS related that, would be a fun thing to share with people? Or I don't know, is there anything else you want to talk about?
I want to come back to self for a moment because
Yes.
it's central to everything that I do. I think it's the meta agenda of all healing work.
Hmm.
It's the meta agenda of all spiritual practice, is accessing and amplifying that access to self, to awake awareness, to consciousness itself. And some people talk about it almost as if it's a place or uh, an entity. It's not. Self is both being and knowing, but it's
Hmm.
got no center. It's got no form. You can't locate it in time and space. It transcends that. And yet it can appreciate the local manifestation. Lori Lamont, a local manifestation of self, a local manifestation of spirit. But we can have both the transcendent and the local.
So so it seems to me, and I could be totally wrong, I don't want to make any assumptions, but so what I'm guessing or hearing is that there's like kind of like a purist IFS that might be made. It's like it's like are people who are kind of just straight IFS, are they seeing this spiritual evolutionary awakening piece, or is this something that you've kind of brought into it?
So,
'Cause I've never heard anybody talking about this
yeah,
much,
I've
and
actually
so
even bought the domain name Evolving IFS.
brilliant.
So here's the way I talk about it. And I have a friend, Sid Friedman. He's a new friend, and we both arrived at this place independently of each other, of seeing that IFS is actually an organic model that's continuing to grow. So if you go to the IFS Institute to be trained, you'll learn what I call classic IFS. The way I teach classic IFS, but what I also teach is that the model is alive, that it is organic, that it lives in the field, and that as we learn it, it begins to change and teach us new ways of using it. So in classic IFS, a constraint release model, you get to know parts or subpersonalities that are blending with the seat of awareness and actually blocking access to the seat of awareness. And you ask them to stop back, soften back, and then you set up a relationship between self and part. The way I sometimes practice is just go directly to self. Just take people directly there and
Kind of like a
amplify
little,
self in their whole system and then go to the parts.
yeah.
And what this can help the system do is begin to self-organize. So with people who are really, really advanced, I mean, I've only done this with really one client, but she's quite far down the road of awakening. We could go in and unburden 4 or 5 parts in a session. And often when I do demos, I do unburden a part because there's so much self-energy when you have the whole group. The whole group is actually holding space. More can happen. But when you're just working one-on-one, it might take you several sessions. It might take you several years to heal a wounded part because the protective layers are so strong. So to answer your question, yeah, I think there's an evolving way of understanding IFS and seeing self as multiple layers of consciousness rather than just this one thing.
Hmm. Wow. And that is exactly why we were connected. I didn't know exactly in the beginning, but now it makes perfect sense.
Mm,
Um, because I, yeah, that this is and really, really, my belief is that all we're here to help the we're here to help humanity to, evolve and access the consciousness and access this spiritual awareness. And I use EFT to clean up the traumas that are, maybe that are the layers on those protectors, not not using that languaging, and you're like it we're all just addressing what we can do to essentially like lift up the humanity. I don't know, I get all excited, I'm gonna cry and I'll stop. But I'm just so thrilled and just so honored that that we're connected and that you're gonna be presenting for the community this month, or in February, I should say. And all right, so how do people learn more about you? How do people learn from you? Because I realize somebody might be watching this video during we have our presentation in February. So how can people connect with you, learn from you?
okay, I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to say something else first by way of helping us bring this conversation to a close. I'm really looking forward to meeting the EFT community because I already, as you know, Lori, I'm already friends with Tori and Bruce.
Mhm.
And I realized that they are also growing the IFS model by doing EFT on parts. And we can talk more about that when I come, but I'm coming to learn as well as to offer my own teaching. Um, how do people get in contact with me? Well, my email address is
I'll put all that in the chat or in the in the
okay,
description underneath. So you don't have to
but
worry about all that.
another
Is there
way
like a
to find
website?
out about me are two websites.
Okay.
One is called Healing and Awakening, and is spelled A-N-D. So Healing and Awakening dot Institute. And that's my school. That's my College of Light Workers. That's where I train people in coaching and in IFS. And I also have my own website, personal website, which is called bridgetothedivine.com. Bridgetothedivine.com. And divine is spelled Divine. Sometimes people put an E in there and then I don't get the email.
Well, I will make sure I put all of the correct spelling of all of the websites and all the ways for people to contact you in the description underneath the video. But I realize that sometimes videos get shared in different places, and sometimes it's I don't know where all
Yeah.
the writing goes. So I just want to make sure at least that way people can connect with you. I want to thank you so much for being here with us today and for, well, just being you and for what you're doing for all of our planet and all of humanity and all those people that don't even know,
Yeah.
right? As we're
Thank you
raising up
very
the
much, Laura.
frequency.
Thank you.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you.